All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of NFA Live. We are back, reliable as ever. Welcome, one and all. Thank you for joining. I'm joined, I should say, today by my two sparring partners. First of all, we have Ben from Into the Cryptoverse. Hello, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks. And Rob from Digital Asset News. How are you doing, Rob?
Doing pretty good. Not as good as the market, as we're having a little bit of a pullback, but not too bad.
Not as good as silver. Congratulations to silver for hitting $50. I think it's the first time in 15 years or something.
Yeah, they're looking good. Commodities are looking good.
Yeah. I was actually looking at tokenized. There are a few tokenized silvers that you can buy, but not any that I was could be bothered to figure out how to buy and go in on. Yeah, it's Rob's gone off to buy silver. No worries. But yeah, we're certainly at an interesting point in the market now. Ben, it's just you and me from this point on.
It's better that way, right?
It's better that way. It's better that way.
Poor Rob.
So
Hey, that hurt. I heard that.
Oh, that's awkward. Okay. Yeah. Someone pointing out in the comments, silver broke $50. Here comes the real bull run. All the precious metal over on precious metal YouTube, they're going bananas right now. You thought crypto YouTube was a crazy place. Precious metal YouTube, those guys go hard. Okay, there's a few things I want to get your guys' opinion on today. I want to start by talking about October. I want to get your take on the current US government shutdown, which is still in place. Then we're going to talk about alts, specifically in the context of BNB recently setting a new high. And then I want to pick your brains. It's funny, I just mentioned tokenized silver, but I want to talk about tokenization in general, because I want to get your thoughts on that and how you might feel about the prospect of maybe one day, holding all your wealth on chain. Whether that's something that you guys would be open to, or maybe that sounds a little bit much for where we are at the moment. But let's start off and talk about October. I would say that so far it is on schedule. We've had a little bit of a pullback the past couple of days. So my question is, and Ben, I'm going to punt this one to you because it contains a phrase that I know you're slightly familiar with. Can we maintain this October momentum, or is Bitcoin dominance going to suck the life out of everything else and keep on climbing? Now, I know Rob's the one who usually makes 3-hour videos about Bitcoin dominance, but I want to get your take on it, Ben, because we hardly ever hear from you on this.
Yeah, figure out how the other half thinks about it, right?
Exactly.
I think what's happening is kind of what happened in October 2020 and October of 2017, where Bitcoin started to move, but then people just started to FOMO into altcoins. And so I think what happens when that plays out, on average, October is the best month of the year for Bitcoin dominance, right? So the monthly returns of Bitcoin dominance in October are about 5%. So within one standard deviation, it's approximately 5%. So I think that what's happening right now and why we've kind of stalled out is, as Bitcoin was breaking the all-time high, people just started FOMOing into altcoins. And now Bitcoin is punishing the rest of the market, is saying, no, you have to remember why we're here. And we're not here for these altcoins. We're here because of Bitcoin, right? I mean, we have to remember that Bitcoin leads the bull market. If at any point it stops leading, then we know the cycle's over, right? Because normally the final rally by alts against Bitcoin happens at the very end of the cycle. So again, anyone who keeps calling for alt season, they keep calling for the end of the cycle, because once that happens, the cycle's usually over. So I think what's happening is Bitcoin's trying to break out, but then as it does, people FOMO into alts. Bitcoin's like, no, we can't do that. If we're gonna go higher, we have to focus on what matters. It then gets a correction, it chops around, and it just sucks that liquidity out of altcoins, and then the altcoins just bleed back to Bitcoin, which is frankly what altcoins do best. So I think that over the next few weeks, I would say for all of October, that this pattern is going to continue, right? Where like Bitcoin tries its hard, it tries to go higher. If people are not FOMOing into alts, then it can. And if people keep FOMOing into alts, then it'll just get another correction to remind people. If you go look at like 2020 and I think even like 2017, but if you look at some of these prior bull market years around this time, one of the things that frequently happened was that kind of early on in October through mid-October, dominance was kind of like slowly going up, right? It was only very slowly going up because, again, everyone was just focused on alts. But then by mid-October, people finally got the memo, right? And you have to sit here and think like, all right, every single day there's people calling for alt season, and every single day, you know, or every few days we see like a drop by Bitcoin dominance, but it just keeps on forming higher lows. So I think that before too long, more and more people are going to start to get the Bitcoin dominance memo, and they're going to realize that liquidity should flow back to Bitcoin, at least for the next, I would say through late October, early November at the very least, right? I think it makes no sense to call for alt season until early November at the earliest. And again, alt season, just to be clear, is not altcoins going up on their USD pairs, right? Like that's not alt season. Alt season is altcoins going up a lot on their Bitcoin pairs, right? If Bitcoin goes up 30% and altcoins go up 10%, some people will say that's alt season, right? But that's not alt season. I mean, alt season is when every altcoin essentially is going up and they're outperforming Bitcoin, right? It's like when Bitcoin's going sideways above like the 20-week moving average and we're at the end of the cycle, that is the alt season that people remember. We have not had an alt season this cycle because every single time alt Bitcoin pairs get any type of a rally, they end up just setting a lower high and dropping back down collectively. Now, any individual altcoin, we've seen them bottom at different times. Solana's Bitcoin valuation bottomed out in like 2023. XRP, we saw that sort of double bottom in late 2024. ETH Bitcoin, we saw that bottom in 2025. So at any point in the cycle, the altcoin in question can bottom against Bitcoin, but collectively, the altcoin market should bleed back to Bitcoin. I would say this, to just get very specific. I think you're going to see alts bleed to Bitcoin until really early November, like let's say between November 1st and November 5th. You'll see a temporary bounce by alt Bitcoin pairs, and then you'll see potentially one more rally by Bitcoin dominance. Like I think we're in the final rotation right now back into Bitcoin, but I think starting about mid-November, people are going to get antsy, try to rotate back to alts for a week or two, but then I think Bitcoin's going to steal the spotlight again, potentially, and see Bitcoin dominance go up into early December. And it's possible for dominance to go up into early December. This is the easy one, right? Just ride the Bitcoin dominance train until early November, and maybe we get extra credit if we're able to do it until early December. It gets harder and harder as the cycle goes on. But those are my views. I mean, I think that Bitcoin is a better hold than a lot of the altcoins. And also, I mean, commodities, as you mentioned, they're doing amazingly well. And it's just a reminder, right, that there's always a bull market somewhere, right? So, I mean, if crypto is not going up, that doesn't mean you don't have to make money. It just means something else probably is. And it's kind of a, just a quote to remember. There's always a bull market somewhere. Always a way you can make money if you're willing to expand your investment horizons.
Yeah. Very true. I just want to throw up on the screen there as well. This is the spot Bitcoin ETFs. Monday, almost record inflows. I think certainly last week I think it was the second highest week for the spot ETFs, the spot Bitcoin ETFs, I should say, since they actually launched. So yeah, I mean, it shows that the capital, any capital that's finding its way into crypto, if you like, certainly seems to be finding its way into Bitcoin first. And I guess, yeah, the question is, will some of it rotate out of it? Will people, and yeah, I mean, I get what you say, Ben, that idea that maybe in early November, people might be tempted to just go out along the risk curve a bit. But you think that's going to be very short-lived if that indeed plays out like you say?
A lot of times a lot of times it feels like the dominance rally ends in early November. And I think even last 2 years, that's kind of when it ended. But in post-halving years, there is, and even maybe to some extent the last couple of years, I don't remember exactly, but in post-halving years, there's reason to believe that the Bitcoin can take that liquidity back starting about mid-November going into early December. And so I would say there does exist a chance that dominance continues the current rally until early December. But I think the easy sort of the low-hanging fruit on the current Bitcoin dominance rally is ride it until early November. And then we can maybe see where it is and talk about what December might look like.
Yeah. Okay. So it's certainly October if you're in Bitcoin, less so if you're in alts. Although as we'll talk about a bit later, some alts have been catching a bit of a bid. But yeah, Bitcoin is the king, as Ben has pointed out many times. Rob, is there anything you want to add to this before we go on to talk about the US government or lack thereof?
Nope, that was great.
Okay. Nope, Ben has said it all. Yeah.
He knows I was not talking about his alt.
Exactly. And
I mean, as long as I cover my bases, I have nothing to worry about.
Thank you for not specifically talking about that. I appreciate it. Sum it all up, do less, make more. Very simple. Thank you.
We appreciate you not talking about our alts, Ben. That's very good of you. Okay, Rob, I'm going to send the next question sort of more your way then, although I'm interested to get Ben's take on it too. But the US government is still shut down. It's been over a week now that those layabouts have been kicking their heels. So what's the latest with it? Is it going to end? Is it, from what you guys are seeing, is there any chance this gets resolved soon? And I'm also curious as to how you think the markets might react to it. I mean, so far we haven't seen much. The markets have kind of shrugged it off. Do you think this is something that's going to get, as it gets longer, the markets could start to care, or what's your take on it?
Well, I mean, this is not the first time. I think over the last 40 years, I took a look at just the government shutdowns. And if you could do me a favor, just throw this up for the screen. Mm-hmm. Over the last 40 years, we've had 25 shutdowns. This isn't anything new. And before we talk about that, I'm not going to get into geopolitics, but there may be a peace deal on the table for the Middle East between Israel and Hamas. I'd like to see that actually happen. So thankfully, or hopefully, that actually comes through, because the war is nothing that we should be having, but here we are. So if we take a look at it, this is from the White House. We can see that it's been 8 days, 9 hours, and 14 minutes, and still counting, as the government has been partially shut down. And we're going to see that, and it happened on, I believe it was October 1st. I think it was at midnight. So as the clock struck midnight, bang, everything partially shut down. There's some that are open, some that are not. And we're going to see that, I mean, the market cap itself, it's gone up, and actually as of yesterday it was not too bad. Let's see, today's the 9th or the 8th? 9th. So today we're a little bit down, but I mean, since it's October 1st, we're still up across the board. S&P 500 is doing great, and I think it's what, like Ronald Reagan said, this is the solution to our problem is not the government. Government is the problem. And since it's been shut down, I took a look at it since 1976. The average since 1980, returns post-government shutdown after 12 months, 17% or 16.95. Now the entire crypto market is up 4%. And we can see that the longer that it's actually shut down, the longest it's been shut down was Trump's previous administration, December in 2018. When it was the border wall funding, and it was shut down for 24 days. No, excuse me. It was down 35 days. And from that time, as soon as it got done, the markets went up 10%, or not when it just got done, but as it rallied into it. And a year later, it was at 24%. So, I mean, and of course, we can go back to 2013, and it was the same thing with Obamacare, as they shut down the government for that. And we can see that, as soon as it got done, after 17 daes, market rallied 3%. Last 12 months, it was 20%. So we can just see that. I think we actually asked this question. I think it was 5 or 6 episodes ago. The question was, is government a good thing? And we pretty much said, for the most part, no. I was the one that said, I'd like the government to actually have some regulatory clarity, especially for what's a security, what's a currency, what is considered a commodity, and so on and so forth. But the rest of the stuff, we can see that this is actually good. And the longer that the government stays closed, I know it's going to hurt. There's some individuals that get hurt. There's some funding that gets overlapped, and it is definitely a big problem. But if we're taking a look at Polymarket, which has been right a lot of the time, they're saying that this is going to last for quite some time, and almost a third of people think it's going to last 30 plus days, which would be on par with what happened with the border funding wall in 2018. And if we see that, I still think it's a pretty good thing for the markets. And I think one of the markets that's going to crush it, and we just talked about it, was commodities and of course the traditional S&P 500. So this is what we have. I think this is so far not a catastrophe. So if we look at the past, it's actually going to be pretty good for us. So if you were waiting for a Q4, which we're here right now, this is a good time to be around. Unfortunately, and we'll get to this question later, I think a lot of altcoins are going to have some problems.
Yeah. Okay. And so from that spreadsheet you had up there, Rob, so the longest one that we've had was the one under Trump around the border wall. That was what, 35 days, was it?
35 days. See, okay. and now maybe the Trump administration is trying to go even longer. Yeah, maybe it'll be 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. But I will say that, there's a lot of government workers that are still working, and they don't get paid until there is a reversal. So they're just working for free. And I just saw an article that, I forgot which airport it was, but the air traffic controllers just all walked out. And now it's being overtaken by another city's air controllers, which they're working remotely. So as a reminder, your air traffic controllers are a government funded job.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know a lot of people feel very strongly about remote working, and I've always been one of those people sort of like, well, it doesn't bother me if people work better. I don't know. Maybe call me old-fashioned. I prefer the air traffic controller landing my plane to be in the office. Frankly, I don't know why, but
it's going to be. Well, it's great right now. In 5 years, it'll be Grok or ChatGPT. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, yeah, it does seem like there's a good chance that it could get longer. Do you think Trump might start celebrating that? Under Biden. Under Obama, they were so short. The shutdowns, they were so short. They're so short. They're much longer now. They go on forever. They're great shutdowns.
Who knows?
I'm expecting that. So much better shutdowns. Ben, what's your take? I mean, is this? Yeah. Do you see this going on for a fairly long time? And do you think it's gonna? I mean, is it gonna actually be good for us in the end? Markets.
I mean, I could see it definitely lasting a while because. I mean, to be completely honest, I'm not really following it a whole lot. I mean, I know the government shut down, but I'm not like reading the news and trying to like decipher exactly when it'll end. I know the betting markets, I think, are leaning, at least another week or two. So I think that to some degrees, like we can pretend our problems don't exist because none of the government data is going to get released for a little while. Like initial claims aren't coming out. Even the Atlanta Fed is stuck at 3.8% annualized GDP for Q3 because you can't update GDP if you're not getting any new government data.
Winning.
So yeah, I mean it's kind of an interesting time. In all the prior shutdowns that Bitcoin has experienced, it always ended the shutdown at a higher price than where it began the shutdown at. So what it's doing right now kind of makes sense. Gold, a lot of times commodities will rally into a shutdown. They'll rally through the shutdown, and then they'll even rally a little bit on the other side of the shutdown before then finally getting a correction, right? So, it's really. And by the way, Bitcoin went through we had a shutdown October 1st, 2013 as well, and same time, right? Same time in the cycle, October of the post-halving year. and Bitcoin went up a lot during that shutdown. So I don't really see anything changing in the next week. I do think that right now, I think the sort of the constituents are patient with them. But I think today or Friday, I mean, you're going to start getting to the point where people are going to start missing their paychecks, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the week, and that's kind of about now. So, I think people will have they'll have support up until it starts affecting people, right? That's how everyone always is, right? They always support it until it affects them. So and that's why I don't talk about people's altcoins, because I'm not trying to do anything that will affect what they think is going to happen to their portfolio. Now, I think that this is it's important, because one of the reasons why government shutdowns don't tend to go on too long is because after people start missing one or two paychecks, they then start changing their tone, and then what ends up happening is then both parties end up getting blamed, rather than just one party. And then it's not good really for anyone, right? I mean, anyone in office that's kind of standing in the way of the government reopening for whatever reason usually ends up taking like popularity hits, and they're not as popular. So then, I would say within a couple of weeks, there's going to start to develop probably a lot of pressure to end the shutdown. But I don't know if we're there yet. I mean, I think it could start after people start missing their first paychecks.
Yeah. And I mean, those are the people who are going to be really affected, isn't it? That's the crazy thing about this. Okay, it may be good for the markets. Most people may not care or even see it as a good thing. A lot of people think the state is far bigger than it needs to be.
Well,
but people depend on it for their livelihoods.
One thing I was thinking about, and I'm wondering what you guys think, like there does exist a scenario where this causes, like, okay, if we're not getting labor market data, right? We're not getting it. We're not getting initial claims. We're not getting unemployment rate. We're not getting any of that stuff. If we're not getting it, then we can't know if the Fed should be cutting more. So, what happens if by the time they finally release all that stuff, it turns out that had they released it on time, maybe the Fed would have cut 50 basis points in late October. But if they're not going to release it, then how can we know? So there's part of me that wonders if that's kind of how, because with the crypto markets, we have the 4-year cycle, right? The 4-year cycle. What if that's the narrative, right? By the time they finally release the data, the market's like, oh crap, the Fed's too late. But maybe the Fed's too late because they can't act on the data because they're not getting the data. I don't know. I mean, it's just one possible thing. I mean, what I think's going to happen, I think that like things like Ethereum, I think they're just going to go sideways for a while and then get a final rally, maybe starting in like a month or something, and then rally into their market cycle tops. Perhaps the data won't be so bad, but it is interesting to think about the fact that maybe the Fed doesn't cut as much because they just simply aren't getting the data to justify the cut.
I will say, it's a good thing to think about. I would say like this: what if we take a look at it and all the data that there's no data that's coming out, and we realize that we don't need the Fed, and we can end the Fed, and then talk to your point about the data that doesn't get released. Who cares? Because the data that does get released sucks. I believe we just took the jobs report from 2024 of March to March 2025, and we lost 911,000 jobs in that report. And then we come out with GDP and we get revisions. First it was 3, and then it was 3.3. Like, oh, whoopsie, just didn't make that. And then of course, these lagging indicators that they have, it's all jumbled. So I look at the Fed and I'm like, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? I mean, thankfully you didn't cause a depression. Good job. You're setting the bar pretty low. But I take a look at this and I'm like, damn it, these guys, if they just would have the right data to do the right things. But then I'm thinking to myself, do we really need them? And then that's where I'm stuck with.
They are doing something, Rob. They're taking away everyone's purchasing power.
That's true. That's true. And someone has to crank that wheel to print those dollars, and they're doing a great job.
Someone's got to that away.
Exactly, man. Exactly. It frustrates me.
Yeah, So a few people have been pointing that out in the comments. I've thrown some of them up there and stuff. But it does raise the question: if agencies aren't getting this data, can the Fed? How can the Fed make its next call on interest rates? I should also point out as well, and this is something Nick and I talked about on Monday's live stream that we did. the SEC can't approve spot altcoin ETFs if they're all out of office, fishing at the lake or whatever they're up to, which of course maybe.
Oh, these are very important.
these are very important, Ben.
See, and this is why people that initially supported it will probably stop not supporting it, and once they perceive that it's affecting them.
Yeah. You'd be like, oh, hang on a sec. Well, I can't get my spot Pengu ETF.
Exactly.
Spot Pengu ETF.
You love that there is an application for it. I've actually just been making a video on ETFs versus DATs, treasury companies, earlier today, and we did a list of all the ones that there are applications out for. Pengu's up there. There's one for the Melania meme coin. Remember that? There's one for the it's crazy. It's crazy.
Wow. That's the future of finance.
We'll have to explain this to our future generations.
What do you mean, Ben? When your kids are celebrating that they live in such opulence, and you can say, "Well, I went all in on that spot Pengu ETF." That's be like that meme, Daddy. Why are we so rich? Well, I went in on the Pengu ETF, son.
Yeah. Here's $1,000 so you can buy a little bit of ice cream. Have fun.
Yeah, right. Go get a single candy bar at the grocery store with us.
I'm going to want change from that $10,000 note.
Nice.
Okay, well, that kind of moves us on to the next question that I wanted to get your opinions on, because as Ben has pointed out, we're in Bitcoin season right now, but nevertheless, some altcoins have been outperforming, and I think the one to talk about here is the one to mention here. Honourable mention goes to BNB, which recently not only set a new high, but also overtook fan favorite XRP to become the third largest crypto by market cap. And if you've been spending any time in the trenches or on crypto Twitter or whatever, it's very much been BNB season at the moment. Lots of BNB projects going crazy, lots of CZ themed meme coins, etc. But my question is, we've seen BNB set a new high. Most alts haven't. Can most alts manage it this cycle? Will we see, can you see a scenario where kind of most of the large caps get their moment in the sun, a bit like BNB's having now, and maybe some select mid caps as well? Or is BNB a kind of outlier in this respect? Is it mostly going to be Bitcoin, as Ben has outlined? Do we think other altcoins are in with a shout? Rob, can I go to you on this one first?
Yeah, and like we were talking about, in the beginning, Ben talked about commodities and the traditional markets that are just going crazy. If I have a friend here named Steven, and he was a big crypto guy. He was a big meme coin guy. He made a good amount of money on that. And right now, I asked him, what are you investing in? He's like, calls and puts and traditional markets. He goes, because it's so risky over in crypto, and I don't really see the whole point of it right now. I mean, we can see some pretty much gains, but why would I take that much risk, especially altcoins, as we get into like number 20 to 100, and then 100 and beyond that? It just doesn't make any sense for me. So I think there's a lot of people that are getting into trad markets. And why is that? I mean, if we take a look at the AI bubble, some people say it is, we're going to need a lot of compute and power. And of course, because of that, we can focus on electrical grids and of course, GPUs. And then of course, because of that, we have to take a look at precious metals. And because of that, that's what people are getting into and going, well, that's the future. That's what I want to get into. Crypto in 2021 was the future. And now there's a fight between what is the future of finance. Is it the Pengu ETF, or is it this compute power that's going to come through? But I've always said, and I will just say like this, I think that there's a lot of these alts are going to struggle. But I think the ones that will do well, and Guy, you said this like 3 months ago or 4 months ago, the killer app for crypto is payments. It's not very sexy, but it's what is needed. And if you could just throw this up, this is what I talk about on my channel a lot. Just go for the rails that are being built on these stable coins. And USDT and USDC essentially are 93% of the entire stablecoin market. And because of that, just take a look at Visa's website. There's a reason why Visa is tracking this, because they're going to have their lunch eaten by stables as time goes on. And you can just see right here, as far as volume, it's Tron, Ethereum, BSC, Solana. And if you just scroll up, you can take a look at it as far as stablecoin transaction count. It's really always the same thing: BSC, Tron, Solana, BSC, Tron, Solana, Ethereum. Sometimes Base gets in there, a little bit of Polygon. And if you don't like this website, you can go over to Artemis and you just take a look at what is it? Active addresses by chain. And what is it? It's BNB, Tron, Ethereum, Solana. And it's just like the same thing over and over again. So if you're wondering, like, why is BNB doing so well? Is it because of the meme coins? Is it because everything's being built on these as far as like with stables? It's probably the big chunk of that. And then of course you can take and break this down by supply: Ethereum, Tron, Solana, BNB, Arbitrum. And it's the same thing happening, I mean, over and over and over again. So I just think that it's going to be payments. And if you're going to bet on anything, I bet on those rails. I could be wrong. I'm wrong a lot. But then this was also just released by Jack Dorsey from Square, as they're allowing small businesses to take Bitcoin payments and have no transaction fees, zero. If I still own my small business, this would be something that I would definitely look into, because I have to pay Visa and MasterCard 2.9% for every transaction, even some little dinky transaction. I don't want to do that. I want to get something like this. I would give my customers a discount. Hey, I'll give you 2% discount if you pay with Bitcoin. If they're going to do that, we'll see. I don't know many people who are using Bitcoin for payments, but I could be wrong. Steak and Shake says they just had a huge last 3 months. So I just see it as that.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Thank you, Rob. Ben, same question to you. I'm guessing I kind of know your answer on this one, but yeah, do you see a scenario where more alts can put in new highs, or is BNB kind of an outlier?
Well, can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. My true opinion is that they haven't put in new all-time highs. The idea that they've put in new all-time highs is an illusion. Again, because of the same thing. If you share my screen.
Here we are. Yep.
So this is the Solana Bitcoin valuation, right? So, it's had decent parts of the cycle, but it's still down 61% since 2021 against Bitcoin, right? Like, this is the point, is that it's not like these things can't ever rally. It's just that you're better off most of the time just holding the king. BNB divided by Bitcoin, like, is it doing well? Like, absolutely. But again, it is still down, 50% over the last few years against Bitcoin. It does occasionally rally up against it, but it's just, this is one of those things where you could go through even XRP Bitcoin, right? You could go through all of these and see the same thing. Like, yeah, like they occasionally rally some, but they're still, they're still not doing that great against Bitcoin. They just, they're still way down here. XRP hasn't hit, it had a high in 2017 against Bitcoin. That was 8 years ago, and it's down 90% against Bitcoin since then. So when you add them all up, right? Every single year, there's one altcoin, or there's one or two alts that are doing really, really well, right? So people then think it's alt season. In 2023, it was Solana. In late 2024, it was XRP. From April 2025 until August, it was Ethereum, and now it's BNB. So it's kind of like there's selective altcoins that do rally against Bitcoin, but it's never the same one, right? It's always a different one, like every single year. And that's the reason why when you pull up this multi-year chart, they're still just bleeding against Bitcoin. And then if you take all of them, total 2, minus USDT divided by Bitcoin, you have this chart, right? And so, when you look at a chart like this, and people are talking about like how great some of these altcoins are, I'm like, well, okay, you had, this was like the Solana alt season, right? This was the XRP alt season. This is the ETH Bitcoin, the ETH and BNB alt season, right? There's always something that's going up and making people get distracted. But the alt seasons that people want do not look like this, right? They look like this, right? Where you have these massive rallies. And that is not something that has happened. So yes, BNB has put in a new high on its USD pair. And that's a good thing, right? I mean, BNB is one of the few coins that has actually been around for more than just a cycle, right? Like Ethereum, okay? And like XRP. I know there's a lot of contention there, but those are a few coins that have been around for more than one cycle. And out of all of them, BNB is probably one of the better ones that has held up against Bitcoin, right? Just to look at the data, like it is. So I mean, it at least it's worth looking at those and seeing that, hey, like these, there's times where these can do well, there's times where you can make money on these alts, but there's also this like recognition that like most of them are still well down against Bitcoin. And so, going back to what Rob was saying earlier, like, we're talking about like ending the Fed, which I mean, I don't think they're going to end the Fed, but I agree with what Rob said. They probably should. It's not like the Fed's done anything great except devalue the dollar, nonstop since they've been around. But I think that because the Fed is never going to stop printing, because the US government is never going to stop printing, as they say, right? Nothing stops this train. Because of that, I don't think it makes sense to value the altcoins in US dollars, because we already know, like, one of the reasons they're going up is just because the US dollar is going down, right? So like the valuation of Solana at $200 today means a lot. It doesn't mean the same thing as a $200 Solana in 2021, because the purchasing power back then of $200 was a lot higher then than it is today. So when I think about like all-time highs and stuff, I think about, altcoins on their Bitcoin pairs. And most of them have not done that, right? Most of them have not done that. And there probably will be some that do, but I would say 99.9999% of the altcoin market. And I feel like I have to add a few nines every year or so because there's just infinitely more altcoins. 99.999 whatever percent of them will never see a new all-time high against Bitcoin, right? And that's a reality. Yeah, like once people accept that reality, then I think it makes navigating crypto a lot easier. Now, I mean, to answer your question, will other altcoins rally against the US dollar? Probably, right? So we saw Solana go to all-time highs back in 2024, 2023, I don't remember. XRP did it not too long ago. Will Ethereum get another rally to an all-time high? Probably, but I think it's probably going to be several weeks away. Is my guess. So yeah, like I think there will be some alts that go to all-time highs. But yeah, I think people need to like kind of sit around and think about like what is it that they're celebrating, because like if they do go to an all-time high and Bitcoin is 2 times its all-time high, you still took on more risk and got less of a return. So that's why I stress the Satoshi valuation more than the USD valuation.
Yeah. Oh, Ben, there I was doing a victory lap on behalf of BNB holders everywhere, of which I am not one.
I mean, I will say that out of all the alts, like BNB has held up against Bitcoin better than most of them, but it's still down 50% since 2022 or whatever.
Yeah, very true. Very true. There's a dash of realism there from Ben. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Rob. Now I want to ask you one more question before we go to comments and questions from the audience. Tokenization. Now let me just actually. I just want to share my screen very quickly because this was an article in DL News that caught my eye recently. Is that up on screen? Hang on, let me bring it up on screen. Yeah, so this guy, Vlad Tenev, who is the CEO of Robinhood. Robinhood, obviously the stocks trading app, a stocks trading platform that is leaning into crypto in a big way. One of the most talked about niches, narratives, if you like, of this cycle has been RWAs, essentially the tokenization of real world assets and putting them on the blockchain. And obviously someone like Vlad Tenev, this is very much his business, so he's going to talk this up an awful lot. But it does look like we're heading towards a future where maybe not all assets, but certainly a huge amount of assets are tradable, are holdable on a block, will be holdable on a blockchain as a token, will be tokenized on a blockchain somewhere. We already have tokenized US dollars in the form of stablecoins, and if you believe the Vlad Tenevs of this world, we're going to basically have tokenized everything, tokenized stocks. We already have tokenized gold, tokenized commodities, tokenized precious metals, tokenized real estate, tokenized art, you name it, it can be tokenized. So my question to you guys is that something that you can see yourselves getting on board with? Obviously, you know more about crypto than a lot of people out there, than most people out there. So is this something that you feel that you can imagine yourself feeling comfortable with a little later down the line? Or is there always going to be something in you that says, certain assets I need to hold these physically, or whatever it is? Rob, can I start with you? Because I know you're both multi-asset portfolio types of gentlemen. But yeah, how do you feel about tokenization? It's coming. Is it something you're going to embrace, or are you still skeptical?
So, yeah, I mean, tokenization, as far as like with dollars, like we talked about with stables, we'll just start there, because I did a video yesterday and we talked about, is it going to be Q4 end of bull run, or are we going to see a super cycle going in 2026, or is it going to be like Tom Lee, 10-year super cycle as we keep extending out, which who knows? So I said that I'm going to have to sell in Q4, especially if we take a look at certain indicators, and then maybe if things get elongated out to Q1 or Q2, sure, I can see that. And I said that I'll probably put a good chunk of that into stable coins. And people were confused, like, why would you put it into stables? Why don't you just put it into dollars? Because it's the same thing. Like, no, it's not. It's a little bit different. First of all, I mean, you can get yield on dollars, but another big thing is this. Have you tried to move your money around in your bank over like 5,000, maybe 10,000, depending on where you're at? It's a pain in the ass. Yeah. And if I want to move anything, and like, let's say like you're Ben, and Ben's like, I want to move $10 million today. Ben's not moving $10 million by his bank. He's going to have to do that with stables. He's going to have to do that with Bitcoin or whatever else he owns. So like, I just see that as like tokenization as a way to get around that. And then also there's people that just can't have dollars. So that's the one thing. And the next big thing is real estate. If you can tokenize a $369 trillion market, and you can tokenize it in a certain way, and you can let people invest in that, that's the hugest winner. That article that you pulled up, Guy, I listened to Vlad talk about that. And he said the big thing that we're focusing on is real estate. Once we can figure that out, and he says we pretty much figured it out, we're just waiting for regulatory clarity, that's going to be the big boom for our industry. And I can see it. It's just that when you get into real estate and you tokenize it, I think it's just better for everybody. And people will say, I know if you invest into real estate, or you probably go into real estate investment trust or REITs, REITs, people say that's the same thing. No, it's not. So with the real estate investment trust, you're looking at multiple businesses and locations, or properties and locations. And it can't just be one. Also, you're not in charge of that. You are just a stockholder, essentially what that is. And you have no rights to do any kind of, and make it your voice. It's just an investment. If you can do that and tokenize an asset and make that into a DAO, and then you can actually have a voice, you can do a lot of big things. And you can actually say like, hey, you know what? Us as the community says we need to sell this one house that we have, if that's what it is, or this one apartment complex. And lastly, I will say that I had a guy on the show last week. His name is Mark Kohler. He's a pretty big following on YouTube and Twitter, 500,000. He's a CPA and a lawyer, and he deals with essentially tax minimization and then growing and protecting your wealth. And one of the things that he told me, which I was not aware of, because of the big, beautiful bill that was passed just recently, this is only for the United States, you can take, and he gave a great example. You have $400,000 worth of Bitcoin, right? And you bought it all for $100,000, and you hold pretty well. You sell it, now you have a cost basis of $300,000 in profits. What do you do with that? Well, you're going to write a check to the IRS for about $120,000. That's just how it's going to be because of long-term or short-term capital gains and state tax. It sucks. What if you could take those, because the big beautiful bill, and take those and roll those into oil? You could roll those into other types of assets. One of those being real estate, short-term or long-term real estate. You can take that, you can get it structured in a specific way, you can take that and offset those gains, and now you're paying either zero or minimization of taxes. And that's all because of this new big, beautiful bill. So when I take a look at tokenization of real world assets, that's the future. And I know that there's people right now who don't want to pay those taxes. I don't blame you. And that, I think, is the next big thing on top of payments.
Okay. So it sounds, Rob, you're pretty, not only pretty bullish on sort of tokenized assets as an asset class, but it sounds like you would embrace that as well.
I'd embrace it, but then I've also got another problem. And that is I have PTSD from 2021, 2022. If I put everything into stable coins, I don't think that's a great idea. And all you got to do is look at Voyager, Celsius, FTX. And because of that, I'm still going to be one of those guys who says, okay, I have to put it into other things because I don't trust anybody. And I think most of the paranoid people are the ones that are going to make it out alive. But I think the new generation that comes in, they'll be like, what? I don't know what that is. I didn't live through that. So I'm just going to do that and put it all in the stables, and that's it until the next big thing happens. So yes, to answer your question, I believe in it. It's just that I'm cautiously optimistic, pessimistic.
There have been bumps on the road. That is for sure.
Right.
Ben, what about you? Are you bullish on tokenization? Is it something that you can see yourself embracing, are you still suspicious of it?
I think it could have some benefits, for sure. I think it's going to take people some time for a lot of people to kind of like see it that way. I think for me, one of the issues I have is that it almost basically, if everything ends up being tokenized, like everything in the world, basically, anything and everything, I almost wonder if it would, I almost wonder if there'd be some issues in the sense that it financializes everything. If your house, your car, maybe even your time, whatever it is, if everything is tokenized, then everything then becomes like a speculative asset, right? And I wonder if part of human values would just erode if everything just becomes this speculative asset. But I mean, there certainly are benefits to it. I think the main thing that I'd be concerned about would be that in crypto, there's hacks and there's stuff like that Rob was talking about with what everyone has PTSD from 2022 and 2021, whatever, from things that a lot of people would have assumed would not be an issue ended up being an issue. I mean, we saw Luna and UST went to zero. Even USDC was depegged for several weeks, or maybe not several weeks, at least several days. I think it was depegged, and I remember seeing it go down to 0.93 or something. And there's probably someone out there that took a huge loss, even though it regained its value. There's probably a lot of people that just saw UST collapse, and they probably sold their dollars for 93 cents on the dollar, only to see it go back up the next day. So I think that the issue is that if everything becomes tokenized, then everything becomes subject to the same sort of these idiosyncratic risks of the crypto space become the risks of everything else as well. So if there ever is a big hack or some vulnerability that we haven't figured out yet, it could have a much larger impact on society. It could take everything down rather than just the crypto markets for 12 months like it normally does. I'm not against it. I think there are some benefits for it. I could see some benefits potentially in real estate and that sort of stuff. But I also see some risks associated with it. So I don't think I would ever want everything to be tokenized, because I wouldn't want that same risk to be spread out across every single asset that I own. It's kind of nice having, my Bitcoin and I own the keys to the Bitcoin, right? I'm not even going out and buying these ETFs and whatnot. I'm just, I have the underlying asset. It's kind of nice having that, but I don't necessarily want the same risks of crypto apply to every other asset that I own. You know, I think it's easy for me to like compartmentalize certain areas of risk and be like, all right, well, I know the risk of this, I know the risk of that. And, you know, when I buy commodities, like if I'm buying gold or silver or copper or palladium, whatever it is, uranium, like I'm not like, I have different risks because I'm not buying the underlying asset with those. Like I'm not going out and stockpiling uranium right in my house. I'm not.
That's what you've been telling. That's what you've been telling the inspectors, at any rate.
It's true. I don't have like a massive stockpile of palladium or silver. I just like I buy the ETFs. Now there's a lot of gold bugs that are absolutely screaming at me right now because you know that they have the same opinion about gold that I have about Bitcoin, right? So I can relate to that. But I also think that spreading out your risk is a good thing. So I think that would be my main fear. But I'm not against tokenization. I don't know that I want everything to be tokenized.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, I agree with you both. I think I think the idea, and it's a really interesting point that you raised, Ben, as well about hyper financialization, because I know this is something that a lot of people outside of crypto, and I think, you know, maybe inside of crypto as well, but certainly this is one of the things that I've heard raised a lot of the time. You know, people not necessarily dunking on crypto per se, but dunking on this idea that everything could one day be a financial asset. Because you know, there's something that threatens to kind of erode a lot of what I think human values there. And it is a sort of, it sounds like an amazing idea in some ways, but actually, is that the future we want? Do we want everything to be an asset? And I mean, and I think it's interesting that you both sort of brought up 2022 and everything that happened with that. I mean, I think that one of the things that really underlines is the importance of self-custody, isn't it? Like, okay, tokens on a blockchain are a really great idea in many, many ways. Can you take those tokens? Can you hold the private keys to those tokens in a wallet that only you control? You know, on a hardware device? Because I think if the answer to that is yes, then that is something I'm interested in. And you know, I would finish by saying a lot of people will argue, and probably quite convincingly, that you only really need one tokenized asset that, funnily enough, you can hold the private keys to in your own hardware wallet, and that is Bitcoin. So maybe that's all the tokenization we need. We've got tokenized digital gold. What do we really need anything else?
Yeah, I will just to piggyback on what you said, Guy. It's great statements. Is you know, people were able to keep their asset, which was Luna, in a cold storage device, and there was no problems with that until there was a massive problem. So that's not that people say, well, that's the future of finance, and now it's at zero. So just be careful.
If everything becomes a token area, you know, if we go that way, there just becomes this like systemic risk if anything ever goes wrong, right? Like if you know, one of the common questions we get is like, how will quantum computing affect crypto? And every single year we're like, oh, we hear this again every single year. But you know, at some point in the future, it might actually be a realistic question to worry about. You know, hopefully that doesn't happen right after everything becomes tokenized.
No, it's like Robert Kiyosaki always saying, "There's a recession coming up. There's a recession coming up. There's a recession." And then, you know, 20 times later, now he's like, "See, I told you." He said that 10 years ago. Yeah, it's
right. And again, like quantum computing, it will eventually be a thing. But I mean, I might have no hair by the time that becomes.
Well, look, you know, the North Koreans were able to steal $1.5 billion, or however much it was, of ETH from Bybit. You know, Bybit, one of the largest centralized exchanges out there, take their security very seriously. North Korea was able to get into that. They took a bit of crypto. I guess, you know, if everything's on chain, Kim Jong-un could end up owning everything. And I don't think that's a world any of us want to live in.
Kim Jong-un is the next Vladimir Putin. Crazy.
Kim Jong-un is, it's his world. We're just going to be renting it from him. Okay, I'm going to wrap things up there, folks, because we are almost on the hour. But Rob, Ben, thank you very much for your input and insights there. Very much appreciated. I'm hoping that we'll be back next week on Ben's channel.
Yeah, I should be here.
Yeah, so looking forward to that. Thank you everyone very much for watching. We'll see you on Ben's channel next week. Can I just give a shout out as well to Coin Bureau Trading, because they are just a handful of subscribers away from 100K and a silver YouTube plaque. So if any of you watching aren't subscribed to Coin Bureau Trading, please do consider it, because it would mean a lot to those guys. Dan, Aaron, Gabby, and everyone else working there put in a lot of effort, a lot of hard work to get us, to get them so close. So yeah, but anyway, Ben, Rob, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks everybody. Bye.